Good afternoon, and welcome to our author conversation with 2024 Michigan Notable Book author Susie Finkbeiner. I, of course, forgot to bring my copy of The All-American, but we but I hope that everybody has seen it, has read it, or if you haven't, that you go and pick it up. It is an amazing book. It's called The All-American by Susie Finkbeiner, and we're going to delve into your writing process and the book itself without giving too many spoilers. We want people to still read it, but we're whetting your appetite for reading this book and also introducing you to Susie and her great work. So I'll go ahead and
Oh,
let you
thank you.
introduce yourself.
Well, I'm pleased to be here. It's still such an unbelievable honor to be a Michigan Notable Book, again, twice. So that's always, it's just such a thrill. And yeah, I hope everyone reads this book and enjoys it. Got a bright red cover. You can't miss it.
You can I know I should have mentioned that. It's like it stands out, right? You will see it. And especially
Yeah.
if you like A League of Their Own, you will you will be interested. That's all I'm going to say.
Yes. Yes.
But I will go ahead and we'll hop into some of our questions and just kind of hear from you. So, our first question today is, what is the first memory you have that really compelled you to write?
Oh, goodness. I grew up in a family of storytellers. So we always had these family stories that people would tell. My dad would tell us stories. Some of them were true, some of them were not, and some I'm not sure about. Um, and,
That's how
and
it
he's also
goes.
a writer.
Mhm.
My mom was constantly reading out loud to us, doing all the voices. She did a really good Mickey Mouse. Um, and so I just grew up in a storytelling family. And so I started telling stories at a very young age. And my mom calls them lies, but they were stories.
They were not
um,
lies.
Not all of them, but so I think in elementary school I had brainy friends. Like they were bookish and all of those things. And so we would write stories together. And I don't think that there's a moment that I started wanting to be a writer. I just always wanted to be a storyteller. That was
Mm.
really what it was. And then I wrote a lot as a student. I went all through high school and college, and it was a very natural transition for me to write a novel. But it felt crazy because who does that? um, it's a huge undertaking. And so my first novel I started writing in like 2011, and it took forever. And I just enjoyed it so much. And it was agony, but it was the best kind of agony. Um, and I just kept going, and I haven't stopped.
Love it. That's great. I didn't realize, I thought you would have started writing a lot earlier. I know because we've had a few published already. And so 2011, it's actually not that long ago.
No, that's when my I started writing novels. Before that, I was a playwright.
Oh,
So,
okay.
but there is absolutely no money in that. Novelists, they don't make much. Playwrights make less, and poets, I don't think they get paid. I think they have to pay for the privilege.
It's just, I'm like, we should really respect our writers more. Come on. You
Please,
know?
world, please.
Please, please. I love that. Well, I mean, I feel like you kind of touched on this a little bit with saying that you've always wanted to tell stories and storyteller, but what are three words which describe you as a writer? And why do you think
Well,
of those three words?
mhm. So the first one would probably be um, family centric.
Mm.
Let's smush that together.
Yeah, yeah,
I like
hyphenated.
writing. Yeah, sure. We'll Shakespeare it and make up our own word. Um, but I love stories about families. I think families that not just biological, but found families.
Mm,
Um, because I think that that's something that we as a community, we as a world, we um, we crave is connection.
mhm.
And so I love writing those stories. Um, the next one I would think is hopeful. I always want readers to finish a story, even if it's not like a happy, cheery ending. I want it to be something that gives them hope that things can get better, that um, even in the darkest night, the dawn is going to come. Because I think that the world is a hard place to live
Mm-hmm.
in, and there's a lot that brings us down. And so I always try to put some hope into my novels, even though my characters go through terrible things. I do terrible things to them.
Why?
But
Why do
I
you
want
do
them,
that?
I
It's
don't
life. It's
know.
life.
It is life.
It's life.
Um, but and so hope is really really important. And oh, the third word, I would say, me as a writer, I am a perfectionist, and uh, that's a problem. And
Hmm.
I know that there will be some people who are listening to this, watching this, who are writers or want to be writers. And I would just say, squash the perfectionism. Don't allow it, because it during the writing of the All American, perfectionism nearly destroyed my career.
Wow.
Um, I was going through an extreme burnout, and the book, as it was coming out, it wasn't perfect.
Hmm.
Of course, it wasn't, because I can't be perfect. But for some reason, I had this expectation of it. And so I'm mean to myself. I'm
Hmm.
meaner to myself than I would ever be to anyone else. And so perfectionism is something that I'm trying to kind of rein in, and I'm trying to beat it into submission so that it will stop plaguing me
Hmm.
and instead work for me to to write better work, but
Hmm.
not perfect, because that's impossible.
Yeah. Yeah. I think a lot of writers are faced with that same issue, right? Where you just want to be able
Yeah.
to, oh, it's perfect right when I put it on the page. I don't have to edit it. And it's like, no, no, no. The best authors out
Yeah.
there, the reason they're known as the best authors is because they had great editors too. Like it's a
Right.
team.
And they're willing to put in the work,
Hmm.
to polish up that mess. Um, Anne Lamott always talks about, and I'll edit just because I'm sure this is a family friendly show, but she talks about the poopy first draft, how it cannot be good. You have to work in it, and you have to persevere, and you have to get the bad out before it can get good.
Yeah.
And so I think also a lot of writers struggle with imposter syndrome, where
Mm.
we just think, I am a hack, I'm a fraud. And no matter how many novels I've written, they're going to find out that I was faking it this whole time. And it doesn't make any logical sense, because if you've done it, then you're actually not a fraud. You actually did it. And so just reframing how we talk to ourselves in our minds and allowing ourselves to be a good friend to our inner selves,
Hmm.
and having support systems, people who love you enough to be honest, to tell you, that didn't work, but love you enough to encourage you through the process.
Yeah, definitely. Oh, it's really good. What really inspired you to write The All-American? Because I
Well,
know the little bit of this story, and I think it's very interesting. So
yeah. In 2020, do you remember 2020 for any
yeah,
reason? Um,
yeah, stuff happened, right?
oh, it did. I actually didn't mind being stuck in my house with my children and my cat. That wasn't so bad.
Hmm.
But I was I was trying to listen to all of the 2020 Michigan notable books,
Hmm.
on audio, because that's the only way I could get a hold of them at the time. Because surely the pandemic couldn't last forever, and we were going to have our party, our
Uh-huh.
big night for notables. And so I was reading A Good American Family by David Marinus, which
Mm.
was a 2020 honoree, along with my book, All Manner of Things. And I was listening to it, and I had no idea about the Red Scare in Detroit in
Mhm.
1952. And so I was just fascinated by this local history. And it was so well written, and so personal to him because it was his father who was accused of being a communist. And at the same time, I was reading a book that I ordered before the pandemic, so I got it. It was The Incredible Women or Incredible Ladies of the All American Girls Professional Baseball League by Anika Arak. And it's this delightful book about the women who played professional baseball in the 40s and 50s.
Hmm.
And it has all these darling illustrations. It was such a contrast to the heaviness of the Red Scare,
Hmm.
the joy of women's baseball. And so I realized that the timelines matched up. And like most novelists that I know, the question of what if kept spinning in my head. What if I put those two together? Because what's more American than baseball? And what's less American than being falsely accused of being a communist? Smash it together and see what happens. And fortunately, my editor was cool with the idea. And I just started researching, and um, it was a fun book to write if I hadn't had that burnout.
Yep.
But the the characters came quickly. Bertha and Flossie were two characters that the character names I had been saving for a long time just for the right book,
Yeah.
and this was the right book for them.
I mean, they're great names for that 1950s, like Bertha and Flossie. It's like, yes, that would be the names. And you could tell, I mean, the characters, they felt very believable. Like I was like, yeah, they felt alive. You got into their personalities. So it makes sense to me that you were like had those characters in your head and were ready to go,
Well,
even
thank
though
you.
you had to fight to get them on the
Oh,
page.
I had to fight Flossie so much. So Bertha was named and modeled after my great aunt Bertha,
Hmm.
who was she worked in the factories in Lansing during World War II, in the
Yes.
car um, manufacturers, and she was gorgeous, and she was tough, and she was funky, and just an amazing woman who I I've always adored, and I miss her so much. And so
Mm.
that name I was going to use her. And Flossie, my great grandma was named Florence, and so that's how she came about. But Flossie was originally supposed to be the quintessential teenage 50s girl. She was supposed to be older and be the cheerleading captain and dating the quarterback from the football team with her ponytail and her poodle skirt and her saddle shoes. But every time I sat down to write a scene with her, she resisted me so hard.
Mm.
Um, and I know people who don't write fiction might think, but you control it. No, we
Mm-mm.
do not. We just don't. I wish we did. Um, and so when a character is resisting me, because it was all in Bertha's point of view
Mhm.
originally, when the character is resisting me like that, a practice that I do is that I sit down and write from their point of view just for a few minutes, just to see what they have to say.
Mhm.
And when I sat down, Flossie told me, "You have me all wrong. I
Mhm.
wish I was 17. I wish I was cool. All of those things I wish, but I'm 11. I'm the smallest in my class, and I hate it.
Mhm.
And I just want a friend." And I was like, "Oh,
There it
so
is.
it's going to be like this, huh?"
Yeah.
And I deserve half the book.
Yeah.
I was like, "Fine."
11-year-old diva. I love it.
Yeah.
That's awesome. I just, and it is so interesting to me how many writers have said like the characters end up changing themselves or writing themselves. It is fascinating how it's like it is kind of a common thing. I don't know.
It is. And I know some authors who they've got a plan, and
Mhm.
if the character deviates, they knock them back into the plan. I can't do that because
Mm,
if I do, it sounds wooden. So
yeah,
it works for some authors, but
not for
it doesn't work
everyone.
for me.
Yeah.
No. Mm-mm.
So this might be, we were talking about the characters. Um, as the author, what is the most meaningful part of the book for you? Because obviously readers are going to have their own interpretation, but what's your most meaningful part?
When I can see the character growing,
Mm,
when I see like how they are growing outside of what I had planned for them. So the ways that they come to realize something about themselves or realize something about the world or find that hope that we were talking about, something that keeps them going. Um, it's the I used to be a teacher
mm,
in a developmental um, center for kids, and when I would be teaching, and the light bulb would go off over their heads, the kids' heads, that was magic.
mhm,
And it's the same with my characters. When the light bulb goes off, I'm like, ah. And usually it's not something that I'm learning along with them.
mhm.
I didn't plan that. So it's magic for me.
Yeah. It's not like, oh, this is the moment that I expected it to happen. It's sort of, oh, that's
Yeah,
the moment. Oh, okay.
yeah. I never go in with like an agenda of what I want to teach
Hmm.
the reader because I think that I don't want a writer to be doing that to me in
Hmm.
fiction. So I don't want to be doing that to a reader.
Hmm.
Um, but I think there's always this organic theme that will come out. And the characters are the ones that teach me what it is.
Hmm. Yeah. I like that. Yeah, and that way it's not coming out, it doesn't come out preachy. Like there are books where I'm reading and I'm like, oh, you were doing so well, and then you just had to go move into the preachy and like this is what you have to take away from this book. And it's like, no, let the readers find, yes, you're gonna have some things that you want them to take away and you want them to understand about the book, but like people are gonna find other things within your book that gonna
Yeah.
resonate with them differently than you didn't even necessarily intend. So,
Yeah. And I think the world is full of people telling us what we should believe, what we should think, what we should do. Let fiction be fiction. Let it be
hmm.
a story. And one thing that's really cool is when I'm talking to a reader and they got something out of the book that I don't know how they got it. Because once the book leaves me and the editor's hands
Hmm.
and gets into the hands of readers, it's their book. It's not my book anymore.
Hmm.
And so I want to serve them well by allowing them to come to their own conclusions and daydream themselves. And I don't want to tell them you better believe this or think that or like this character, not that one.
Yep, exactly. Yeah, I like that. Now, now we're, talking about kind of what you're wanting to portray in the book, but you're also wanting the reader to take away whatever resonates with them. But what would you like to see a reader take away from your book, from the All-American?
And this I'm not going to get into any spoilers, but Flossie throughout learns that not every story has a happy ending. Not
Mm,
every story ends the way we want it to. And Bertha learns um, that we can grow to be the kind of people who come back from difficult things. Um, and so I would love for the reader just to be encouraged
mhm,
that just because something is not the way you want it to be doesn't mean that it's not good.
mhm,
Um, and and just because some bad things happen to us doesn't mean that your life is over and ruined.
mhm.
Um, Life keeps going. The seasons change, the daisies come up again, um, and so just to have hope that things will improve, and we just have to be resilient. And if we can't do that on our own strength, hopefully we have a community that can bolster us and keep us going. Just like the girls had Uncle Matthew and teammates and new friends.
Mhm. Yeah, I like that. I mean, and it makes a lot of sense with your whole thing about you're hopeful, right? And that even when your characters go through terrible things, which we will all go through in our lives, so we can all resonate with.
Hmm.
Especially when you're writing in the midst of the pandemic. I'm sure that was probably like probably a little part of the burnout too, but definitely
Right.
fueled the need for hope for sure.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I like that. And what was your reaction, talking about hopeful and happy things? What was your reaction when you learned that your book was selected as a Michigan Notable Book?
Well, I have to backpedal to
Hmm.
the end of 2019 when I got a Facebook message from someone at the Library of Michigan, and it was Tim Gleisner,
Oh
and it
yeah.
was saying that apparently I made myself very hard to get a hold of, and so he had to go through my author page on Facebook. And so it's, we would like to let you know that you're being honored as a Michigan Notable Author. And I thought it was a scam.
Well, I mean, it's a Facebook message. You're like, oh, this is a scam. No way, is this real?
I was
Yeah.
like, how much money do you want me to give you? Because I was like, I knew about the Michigan Notable Book, but I was like, surely that's not for me. Like,
Mhm.
you know, um, and so I Googled his name and I realized he was legit. And and then it was shocked because I didn't enter my books. I didn't know who did. I still don't know who did. Um, but whoever it was, if you're listening, thank you so much. And so at the time, I didn't know how it would literally change my life.
Mm.
Um, so this time, when I got the email, because I made myself easier to find,
Thank you.
um, when I got the email, um, I knew what it meant. And so it was just, I didn't even have to open the email. I saw the little subject and I was like, thank you. I was just overwhelmed with gratitude and um, just all the emotions.
Mm.
And so I just kept thinking, what what an honor. Just it's an absolute honor to be recognized, number one, by the state that I have lived in my entire life
Mhm.
and that I love so dearly, and the library system. I grew up in Lansing. So
Mhm.
I remember watching the library being built, like
Really?
driving past it to go to church. Um, yeah, yeah. And to be recognized by the library that poured so much into me
Mhm.
my entire life, you know, from the time I started reading like little picture books and all the way through my life through difficult times, the library was a constant.
Mhm.
And so those two things that have formed me, the library and the state of Michigan, it
Mhm.
just, I can't articulate it correctly, but it was just overwhelmingly wonderful.
Oh, that's wonderful to hear. I'm glad. I didn't realize that you actually were originally from Lansing, so
Yeah,
that's really cool.
yeah, yeah. Generations of my family. Um, it's funny because I will look back through old newspapers. I have a subscription to
Mhm.
or whatever, and I'll look through those and find family members, and it's just so amazing.
That's cool. I love it. Now, after you'd learned that you were a Michigan Notable Book Award winner for the second time, who was the first person you told? And, why did you tell them first? What was their reaction? Kind of what did that mean to you? All of that.
Yeah, and always, no matter what, the first person that learns anything is my husband.
Hmm.
Any of these kind of things, because it's just he is the one that supports me. He insists that I continue even when I want to quit,
Hmm.
especially with this book. So I called him, and of course, I usually text him. So I called him at work, and he's like, "What's going on? Everything okay?" And I'm like,
He's like, oh my gosh, who died? What's going on? You're
"Right, yeah, yeah."
Oh my goodness. That's hilarious. I know it's true. If
Mhm.
if I were to call my husband, he's like, "All right, what's going on? What's the what's the emergency?"
Yeah, yeah.
It is funny. I love it. And well, and
Yes,
it was a
but
lot of fun too. I will say when I emailed you for saying, "Oh, okay," and then copying your publicist, and then I also emailed Aaron Bartles copying your guys' the same publicist.
so I do need to tell that story.
Okay.
So Aaron and I are good friends,
Mhm.
and so that I closed my email and I went to Facebook just to scroll through because that's what we do when we're not writing. And she had posted, "Got some good news today. Can't tell you what it is." And so I texted her. I was like, "Did we get the same good news today? Should we meet up for drinks?"
You're like,
And so we didn't. We weren't like saying what it was because of course we want to keep it a secret until it's in the newspaper. And
hmm.
so we went out and we never said what we were celebrating, even to each other.
But you both knew, right? You're like, we
Yeah.
know.
And so we were like, this is really cool.
That's so fun.
Yeah, because in 2020 we were honored at the same year. So both times that we both got it, we were together.
That's
Mhm.
right. Yeah, I was like, that was 2020 as well. That's so funny. I
Yeah,
guess you guys just need to publish together more often. You're like good luck charms for each other or
I
something.
guess we are.
I love that. And now this is kind of more of the fun thing, since I know you're a reader, because most writers are, and you've also said how much the library means to you. What books are you currently reading, or which
Oh,
books have given you joy recently that, or really made you think that you want
mm,
to share? I know it's
all
like,
of them.
I know it's
Yeah.
so hard, right?
I am a big fan of middle grade. And I just read the Many Assassinations of Samir, Seller of Dreams by Daniel Nayeri. It was a Newbery Honor book this year. And oh, oh, at one point I was like, I'm gonna email that man and tell him that he can't be doing that to my heart. And then I turned the page and I was like, oh, it was one of those books that I was like, did not see that coming. Um, so that was one of the books this summer that I just adored, and it's
Hmm.
beautiful. It's got all these great illustrations, and one that I want to read again, incredibly soon, is Cloud Cuckoo Land by Anthony Doerr. It is the first time I read it, I was like, well, I could never do that. That was spectacular. But then I heard him speak at a conference, and he was just so encouraging
Mm-hmm.
and so engaging and so funny that it made me want to read it again after having the experience of actually meeting him. I was the last in line to get my book signed, and it was like a 2.5 hours, 3 hour wait, and I was like, yes, I am the last. So
You're
it
like,
was
I'll
good.
get to talk to him a little more.
Yeah, and he was still nice. He wasn't
Oh,
like
like I'm ready to go. Yeah.
right. But I also really enjoy Maggie O'Farrell.
Mm,
Hamnet is and will always be a favorite
mm. Yeah, there's just
because
so
I'm a
many good
Shakespeare
authors.
nerd.
Shakespeare nerd.
Oh, I am a super nerd, super nerd.
I love it. Have you been to gosh, Stratford upon Avon in or Stratford in Toronto or area?
Oh yeah,
Oh yeah. That was fun.
I was gonna say that like I'm involved in a community theater in my area and I actually got to be in Hamlet. I
That's
was I
cool.
was the queen, I was Hamlet's mother. So spoiler alert, I got to die and be dead for
Wow.
like 20 minutes on stage.
Nice. And you have to stay still. It's probably pretty hard to do.
It's so hard.
Mhm.
So stinking hard, especially when people in the audience are like talking back to the actors and
You're like, you want to like, hey, cut it out.
no, I wanted to laugh.
I know
Um,
that too.
because the very end of Hamlet's life, he says the rest is silence. And
Mhm.
our Hamlet, who's a good friend of mine, he was going, the rest is, and the woman behind me said, is silence. It's silence. And I was like trying not to shake.
That's awesome. That is the thing about when you act in front of people. Like, you just don't know how they're gonna respond and
Yeah.
react.
Yeah, it's so
Yeah.
funny because with novel writing, I'm not there when they're reading it. I'm like, it's a different, you get
You
the
talk to
reaction
them
and the review.
afterwards. Yeah, right.
Correct. But then with acting, it's like, especially this theater is very small. And
Oh,
so you're right in their face and they will make faces at you like,
and you're like, whoops, okay, that was a misstep.
yeah, it's a huge risk and adrenaline rush. I don't need to jump out of a plane.
No, just do community theater. You're good.
Yeah, for
So
no
funny.
money.
For no money, but lots of fun.
It is so much fun.
Mhm.
Yeah,
I
so much
like
fun.
that. Well, it was such a pleasure talking with you and getting to hear a little bit about the process behind this book and again about your writing. And yeah, I look forward to many more books to come and best of luck on, conquering that perfectionism.
Thank you so much.
It's a
Thank you. This
challenge.
was so much fun.
Yeah, it was great. Well, you have a great day and
Thank you.
congratulations once more.
Thank you. Thanks so much. Like, it just, yeah,
I'm so glad, it means a lot.
it does so much.
We'll see you.
All right.
Bye.
Bye.